The evening rush at Burger Haven was in full swing. Customers lined up at the counter, some impatient, others lost in their own world. The smell of sizzling fries and grilled burgers filled the air as Emily wiped her hands on her apron and stepped up to the register. She had been working at the fast food joint for over a year, juggling shifts while trying to save for nursing school. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills. She had learned to ignore rude customers and fake smiles when necessary. Tonight, however, she was about to face one of the worst. A tall man in a police uniform stepped forward, his badge glinting under the fluorescent lights. Officer Darren Cole. He was well known around town, feared by some, disliked by others. His reputation for being rude and dismissive wasn't a secret. "I'll take a double cheeseburger, extra pickles. And make it quick," he said, his tone sharp. He didn't look at Emily, just pulled out his phone and started scrolling. Emily nodded. "Would you like fries or a drink with that?" Officer Cole let out a loud sigh, shaking his head. "Do I look like I need advice on what to eat?" he muttered, his voice dripping with sarcasm. A few customers turned to glance at him, sensing the tension. Emily forced a polite smile. "Just doing my job, sir." "Yeah, a real important one," he scoffed. "Flipping burgers, real contribution to society." The insult stung, but Emily didn't let it show. She had dealt with worse. Without another word, she entered his order and handed him the receipt. As she moved to the kitchen to check on the food, she heard him chuckle. "Fast food workers," he said to no one in particular. "Probably couldn't handle a real job if their life depended on it." Emily's hands clenched into fists, but she took a deep breath and pushed through. She had no idea that soon, this same officer's life would depend on her. Emily forced herself to focus on the orders instead of Officer Cole's words. She had heard plenty of insults before, but something about his tone made her stomach turn. Still, arguing wouldn't change anything. She grabbed the brown paper bag filled with his food and walked back to the counter. "Here's your order. Have a good night," she said, keeping her voice steady. Officer Cole snatched the bag without a word of thanks. As he turned to leave, he muttered under his breath, "Yeah, sure. Keep dreaming about that nursing school, kid." Emily's jaw tightened, but she let him go. People like him never thought twice about the weight of their words. The restaurant settled into its usual rhythm after he left. Emily focused on her work, pushing the encounter out of her mind. An hour passed, then 2. The shift was nearly over when a loud commotion erupted outside. A sudden crash, the screech of tires, then a loud, gut-wrenching yell. Emily's heart leaped into her throat. She rushed toward the glass doors and gasped. Just outside, in the middle of the road, Officer Cole lay sprawled on the pavement. His motorcycle was several feet away, dented and smoking. A car had slammed into him before speeding off, disappearing into the night. People gathered around, shouting in panic, but no one moved to help. Emily didn't think. She ran. She dropped to her knees beside him, her hands hovering over his chest. His face was twisted in pain, his breaths shallow. Blood pooled beneath him, staining his uniform. "Officer Cole," she called, but his eyes barely fluttered. A bystander yelled, "Someone call 911." Emily didn't wait for help. Training from her nursing prep classes kicked in. She pressed her fingers to his neck. His pulse was weak but still there. He was losing blood fast. She tore off her apron and pressed it firmly against his side, trying to stop the bleeding. "Stay with me," she urged. "You're going to be okay." His eyelids fluttered open, and for the first time, his eyes met hers, not with arrogance but fear. "You," he whispered, barely able to speak. "You work at..." Emily nodded, pushing harder against his wound. "Burger Haven," she finished. "Yeah, and right now, I'm the one keeping you alive." His lips parted as if he wanted to say something else, but the pain swallowed his words. Emily's hands shook, but she held steady. She wasn't going to let him die. Not tonight. The world around them seemed to blur as Emily's focus remained solely on Officer Cole. The sound of people shouting for help grew distant, and the only thing she could hear was his labored breathing and the rapid pounding of her own heart. She pressed harder against his wound, hoping the makeshift bandage would hold long enough. His pulse was growing weaker. Her hands, slick with blood, trembled, but she refused to give in to panic. "Stay with me," she whispered again. Her voice quieter now, but filled with determination. "You're going to make it." She looked up, searching for anyone who might have the medical knowledge to help, but the crowd was frozen. Some stared in shock, others too afraid to approach. Emily realized it was up to her. She had to be the one to save him. Minutes felt like hours. She barely noticed when someone finally shouted that the ambulance was on its way, but she knew that time was running out. "Hold on," she repeated, trying to keep her voice steady. "Help's almost here." Officer Cole's face twisted in pain again. I didn't mean it," he rasped, barely able to speak. Emily blinked, not fully understanding. His eyes locked onto hers, and there was something raw, something vulnerable in them. For the first time, he didn't look like the arrogant officer who had mocked her earlier. He looked like a man who was scared, who needed help, just like anyone else. I didn't think you could." He coughed, his body jerking slightly with each breath. She held his gaze, willing him to stay awake, to stay alive. I know, but you're gonna make it, okay? Just stay with me." He gave a weak nod, and then his eyes closed again. Emily's heart skipped a beat. She pressed her hands harder against the wound, feeling the warmth of his blood seeping through. Tears burned at the corners of her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. She couldn't. She had to keep fighting. Minutes later, the sirens finally broke through the silence, and the paramedics rushed to his side. Emily stepped back, watching as they took over. They worked quickly, and after what seemed like an eternity, they managed to stabilize him enough to transport him to the hospital. Emily stood there, breathless, her entire body aching from the intensity of the moment. One of the paramedics turned to her, a nod of respect in his eyes. "You did good," he said. "You saved his life." But as they loaded Officer Cole into the ambulance, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that this was far from over. The following day, Emily couldn't stop replaying the events in her mind. She was back at Burger Haven, trying to focus on the endless orders and the chatter around her. But her thoughts kept drifting to Officer Cole. Was he really okay? Had she done enough to save him? She tried to push the worries aside as the lunch rush came in, but something about the whole situation wouldn't let her rest. She had saved his life. That was undeniable, but would he ever acknowledge that? Or was she just another anonymous face in the crowd to him? As the afternoon went on, she finally received word from the hospital. Officer Cole was stable. He had survived. A small sense of relief washed over her, but it still didn't feel like enough. That evening, just as her shift was ending, Emily's phone buzzed. A number she didn't recognize. "Hello?" she answered. "Is this Emily?" a voice asked. Her heart skipped a beat. It was a familiar voice, though weak, and filled with hesitation. "Officer Cole?" she asked, almost not believing it. "Yeah," he replied, sounding a little surprised that she recognized him. I just wanted to say thanks for yesterday. I didn't think you'd be the one to help me. You probably don't want to hear this, but I was wrong about you, about people like you." Emily didn't know how to respond. His words were so different from the harsh ones he had thrown at her before. "You don't have to thank me," she said softly. "I just did what anyone would do." There was a pause on the other end of the line, as though he was carefully choosing his next words. "No, Emily, you saved my life. And I don't forget that. You didn't have to, but you did. And for that, I owe you." She swallowed, feeling a lump form in her throat. "I'm just glad you're okay." "I'll be coming by to thank you properly," he said, his tone more serious now. "I'm still processing everything, but I can't just let this go." The line went silent for a moment before he added, "I've been a jerk, and I owe you an apology. I won't forget this. Not ever." Emily hung up the phone, her hands shaking. A part of her didn't know what to make of it. Was this real? Had Officer Cole really had a change of heart? The next morning, as she arrived at work, a familiar black SUV pulled up outside. She froze for a second, recognizing the vehicle. Officer Cole. He stepped out slowly, wearing a suit instead of his uniform, his face a little more tired than usual, but his expression was different. Gone was the arrogance, replaced by something softer. "Emily," he said as he walked toward her, his voice genuine. "I wanted to apologize again, for everything, the way I treated you and for underestimating you. You saved my life, and I can't ignore that." Emily smiled, feeling the weight of the past few days lift slightly. "It's okay. It was just instinct, you know?" He nodded, still looking a little uncomfortable. "Still, I want to do something for you. Anything. You name it." She paused, thinking for a moment. Well, I've been trying to save up for nursing school. Maybe if you're serious, you could help out with that. He raised an eyebrow, surprised. You're serious? She smiled. Yeah, it's been my dream for a long time. I've got a lot to make up for, he said with a half smile, pulling out his phone. Consider it done. I'll make sure you get what you need for school. Just promise me you'll follow through with your dream, okay? Emily's heart swelled. She had never expected anything like this. The man who had once mocked her was now offering her the chance to make her dream a reality. Thank you, she whispered, feeling overwhelmed. Officer Cole gave her a respectful nod. You don't have to thank me. You're the one who saved my life. Now it's my turn to make sure you get yours. And with that, Emily realized something truly incredible had happened. Not only had she saved a life, but she had also witnessed the power of redemption. Over the next few weeks, Emily's life began to change in ways she hadn't expected. Officer Cole kept his word. Not only did he help her with nursing school expenses, but he also made sure she had everything she needed for her classes. She started to feel like her dream was within reach, something she had worked so hard for, and yet had felt so distant just a month ago. Every time she received a letter from the school or a scholarship update, she thought of the officer who had once looked down on her, who now believed in her future. But it wasn't just the financial help that made a difference. Emily could see the change in Officer Cole. After the accident, he seemed more humble, more considerate, even when he didn't have to be. When he passed by Burger Haven on his shifts, he would wave to her, stopping to chat for a moment, and to her surprise, he would often thank her again for what she had done. He wasn't perfect. He still had moments when his old, gruff self showed through. But he was trying, and that meant something. One afternoon, while Emily was at work, she saw him pull up again, this time in uniform. He smiled as he approached her counter. I've got a surprise for you, he said, a mischievous glint in his eyes. Emily raised an eyebrow, feeling a little nervous. What's going on? I've talked to my department, he began, looking a little sheepish. And they've agreed to sponsor you for a health and wellness program. They're offering internships and even paid opportunities for nursing students. Her eyes widened. Wait, you're serious? He nodded, his grin widening. I wouldn't joke about something like this. It's a way for me to give back, to support you the way you supported me. I've been a cop for years, but this is the first time I'm seeing someone with real potential. Don't let this opportunity slip away. For the first time, Emily realized how much Officer Cole had changed, not just in his actions, but in the way he saw people. She had never expected such a gesture from someone like him, someone who had once dismissed her dreams. I don't even know how to thank you, Emily said, her voice breaking slightly with emotion. You don't need to, he said quietly. You've already done enough. That night, after her shift ended, Emily sat in her car, reflecting on everything that had happened. She had come so far, but there was still so much ahead of her. The road wouldn't be easy, but with the help of people like Officer Cole, and the strength she had within herself, she knew she could make it. And though she didn't know exactly where life would take her, she realized that sometimes the most unexpected encounters could lead to the greatest transformations. Emily had saved his life, and in return, he had given her a chance at hers. Hey everyone, thank you so much for tuning in and reading this story. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we loved sharing it with you. If you want to see more heartfelt tales like this one, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an update. Don't forget to like if this story touched your heart and comment below with your thoughts. We'd love to hear from you. If you know someone who would enjoy this, be sure to share it with them. Your support means the world, and it helps us bring more amazing content your way. Thanks again, and we can't wait to see you in the next one.